Welcome to another episode of D&M with Jasmine, a podcast where I have deep and meaningful conversations with my guests. And today is extremely special for me because I have a person who is a metaphorical light in my life. Because when I met her the first time, I was in the weeds, and just her words healed me. But also with time, her actions, her support took me out of a very dark place. So I am proud to call you my friend and to have you on my podcast today. Please welcome Olivia. Hi.
Hi. I want to hold your hands. Thank you for saying that. You're such a light in my life.
I really want you to, in your own words, introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and just connect with my listeners.
Yeah. Okay. Who am I? It's easy, very easy question. I am currently a student, which is wild. I have spent. I'm at my heart. I'm a theater nerd. So I have done theater or the arts my whole life. Basically, there was a brief period in there that I rode horses, which was really nice, but also I was never going to go into sport. And so I've done theater my whole life, and I discovered in high school that you can use theater to talk about social issues or things that are happening in your community or write your own plays. So I spent my teens and 20s and 30s working with communities to make plays about issues that were important to them, whether they were high schoolers in Philadelphia public schools or women in Nepal or Afghan immigrant and refugee women who had made their way to New York or young people in a residential orphanage in Guatemala. So I've done a lot of very disparate things that feel very connected to me because it's all about how do you use the arts and metaphor. I think so frequently it's hard to tell your own story, but metaphor and theater help you do it. So yes, and then I've been running an organization for 5 years that specifically does that to do sexual health education.
It's amazing the way you've been very concise about your entire life journey. Just under a minute, this is who I am.
I mean, there were some other things that happened in there. I'm sure we'll get into.
I love that. It's so interesting to me that I also grew up as a content nerd. Let me just put it that way. That I learned this word very early on. It's called thespian. So I was I'm a thespian and I love theater, and I would always audition but not fit into certain roles, and that just made me sad. And I realized that even the supporting roles, and it's the impact that you leave as an actor that's so important. So growing up, I got a chance to write and direct and act in a play, and I loved doing that, but I was also encouraged by the same teacher that it's great that you love this. This cannot be your profession, Jasmine. You are not going to be able to make money out of this. And then I see you and I'm like, yes, there was potential, maybe in another country, but yeah. So, yeah.
It's funny you say that. I joke that I've made being unemployable my job. I have degrees in women's studies, classics, sociology, theater, applied theater, and soon public health. So to me, that makes huge amounts of sense. And to your point, a lot of the jobs that I've created or I've brought my specific skill set to, it makes me really, the balance of realism and crushing dreams, I think is really tough when you work in education. I've spent a long time working in education, and I hear the realism of maybe the rule in my house growing up was you have to have a fallback plan. So I also was an electrician and I worked on cars because the idea was if theater didn't work, I can write, I can work on cars, and I can do basic electrics. I will not starve.
Oh.
And so I think that sort of practicality is useful, but also what do you gain by telling a young person that they're not going to be able to do a thing they love to do?
Well, that's why we have a lot of engineers and doctors back in my country, because a lot of dreams were crushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we look at you, we want to try new things. And that's why a lot of engineers are stand-up comics now.
Yes, and I recognize this will be broadcast to the nation, but some of them are not very good stand-up comics too. I love
Yep.
their expression and I want them to space for it, but I don't always want to be in the room.
Yeah, but I want to know more about your family and how supportive, or let's just say, what are their mind models about you choosing a career that might require you to have a fallout plan or something
Yeah.
like that. So yeah.
So one of the things that's useful to know is my sister, who's 10 years older than I am, has a pre-med and dance degree. So we both had these like very like creative, useful. But theater was okay. My dad worked in theater for a long time growing up. My mom has done a million things. She's just very smart and she's done a lot of things. And so like they sort of understood theater, but the problem was when I started to do what's called applied or community-based theater and like going to Afghanistan and going to Qatar and like doing this travel that there was no way for them to understand and like have a concrete example of what I was doing. So the thing I realized that I had to do was like tell them the stories about what I was doing every day because they understood like, oh, you're putting on a play and you're lighting a play outside of Kathmandu. You plug in the lights and you make a plan and you turn on the lights in a specific order. But when I said I'm working with a group of HIV positive children to make a play about their lives for their legislators, what are the steps of that? They had no idea. And so like trying to make it concrete for them became really important. I've been very lucky. No, I am very lucky. I'm also just a deeply independent person. So their support was important to me. But as soon as it was no longer necessary, I was like, I don't need this anymore. So your approval actually, while I would love it, is not necessary. And I think that also really helped me just like follow the things that I wanted to follow. The story about me growing up is I was like 2 or 3 years old and my parents were in my room trying to read me more bedtime stories. And I said, can you please leave? I'd like to go to sleep now. And so that was sort of how I treated my career, which is like, I have been very lucky, right? Like I went to very good schools and didn't actually. I thought they were going to help me pay for a very good college, but I've put my way now through 2 master's degrees without them and sort of like, cool, you've done all the work, but you've read me the bedtime stories and now I'm like going to go to sleep and wake up and do the things I want to do.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. This is very new to me, by the way. So meeting women who are so confident and so self-assured, I am in a way just looking for like, I'm sure there's like a moment of weakness. I'm sure there's a doubt that that seeps in. I want to know the conversations that you've had with yourself and you still have when everyone around you comes with skepticism and doubt and that seeps in, and how do you internalize, if you at all do that, and what is the inner dialogue that happens?
I don't know how you don't internalize that. I have 20 years of training of being empathetic and like understanding emotions. Also, I'm a woman. Like women are just socialized to do a lot of that. I don't know how you can't take that in. A practice when I notice things that are happening where I'm like starting to doubt myself or asking myself a lot of why do I want to do this? What will I get out of this questions? I really try to pause, and I'm not very good at this, but I really try to pause and say like, is this my thought or is this someone else's thought? Right? Like, I understand that my parents, my aunts and uncles, so many people in my life are trying to protect me and want the best for me. And that's where a lot of these doubts come from of like, do you really want to stop when you're 35 and get another degree? Like, won't that look bad on your resume? But that's not my thought. That's their thought. Right? And so I think sometimes rather than being in conflict with them, really trying to identify in myself what's my North Star and what's a thing, like what are the other things they've put in my sky, you know?
Yeah. So there's a very clear distinction and there's a very clear self-awareness. What is the motivation behind this, and what is the story of Olivia that happened and that this grew into that what I have to say is my truth, and I will work in accordance with that, because it comes with um, some experiences where you have put faith in yourself and things have worked out for you. But what if you've put faith in yourself and things have not worked out for you?
Oh, there are plenty of those experiences too. Those are the stories I tell less, but there are plenty of them. I mean, I think one of the things we have to start with is like, I'm an able-bodied white woman with a good education in the United States, right? So like all of those are privileges that allowed me to be more confident in myself, that took away some of the hurdles I would have had to run from any other identity. Not that I didn't have my own, but that's a pretty good starting place. Um, I also think so much of it comes down to whether it's nature or nurture or just an accident of brain chemistry. Actually, it might be theater. I think I've always been a pretty independent person, and I've always loved telling and watching stories. And something that I think about, especially with all the theater training I have, is like, what's the story of this moment? Right? Like when I tell this story, is it going to be, and then I like was true to myself and thought about what I wanted to do next, or like I wanted to learn this skill, so I did this thing, or is the story going to be, and then somebody that I love talked me out of doing a thing. And sometimes taking it out of myself and the story is really useful. I also think for whatever reason, I'm also just like, I'm a really good theater artist. I'm a very bad liar, including lying to myself. And so that really changes how I respond.
What are these lies that you don't tell yourself?
Like, for example, I've worked so many jobs. I was in my 30s before I only had one job at a time. And I could never tell myself, like, oh yeah, I'm excited to go to work today. I would have to tell myself, like, I'm excited to be done with work and get my paycheck in 2 weeks. I don't believe myself, right? And so I've had to be really clear about my intention and follow through with it.
It's so strange that you say that to me, because you come across as such a positive person, and I take up on your energy. So when I'm down, I see you and I feel like, oh wow, she is doing amazing. Look at her, she's exhausted, but she's in the gym at like 7 in the morning and she's doing so much. So you have become that source for my energy. And I personally know a few other people who also do that. So what is again the deep source of that positivity? And do you think being positive, um, I'm sure that it is helpful, but is it also that you're working in accordance with your true beliefs, or are you, just faking till you make it?
That's an interesting question. Can I take them in reverse order?
Yes, please.
I don't know what I gain. I know what I gain by trying to be as positive as possible. I also grew up with a parent with pretty extreme mental illness, so I know what it looks like. I know what mental illness looks like, right? And being positive doesn't mean I don't have my days of like depression or triggered days, right? But like I identify them and I try not to like go into public because that won't be good for me. And so I think I know what I gain from being positive, which is that's how I want to show up in the world. And being positive, by the way, doesn't mean skating over the things that are tough. I think what allows me to be positive is calling bullshit on things that are tough, or being like, oh, cool. Just nobody's ever studied the effect of this on Black women. That sucks. Like, that's an important piece of my positivity, which is I have to notice the things that are not positive all the time. I also think so much of it is about balance. I also like, part of me feels like such an imposter talking about this because like it's a little bit of work.
It's a lot of work. It takes more of your energy to, come across as someone who's full of energy and full of light. And I can't do this. It's exhausting. By 12, by noon, I am just like, okay, so I have decaf coffee. So I'm like, nope, not anymore. So until I have like a real coffee, I can't. I don't have the energy. But you do, and I'm still. I know you shared that there are days and there are moments, and you choose not to publicly show them. But I want to know, who is it? Who are the people that you do show those things to?
I also want to be really clear. I'm practicing showing them to more people, but so much of the reason I don't show them is because they don't make me feel good about myself, right? So it has nothing to do with, I recognize that contributes to some of the silencing around mental health and some of the silencing around like my worst days. But it's also not good for me to be around people with that all the time. And so I have a couple very close, trusted, my sister. I'm married to a wonderful person. I have a couple of deep and meaningful friendships that I try to be really clear about. Yeah. And I think, thanks to multiple years of therapy, I've been in therapy for so long, I'm getting better at telling the stories after the fact. So I'm not always good at in the moment, right? Reaching out to people who aren't my people, my very small people for help. But I try to be really honest after the fact of yeah, that was a toughie, or tell the story. Which I think is very real. Something else you said, and I spent a lot of my formative years in high school as a leadership trainer, and we talked a lot about attitude. And the thing that, and again, there's so much privilege in this statement, but the thing that people just kept saying was don't make a have to list, make a get to list. Mm-hmm. And just little things like that got wormed their ways into my brain when I was really young, sort of reinforced the practice of do I have 5 finals due in the next 10 days? Sure do. Do I get to take a year off from working so I can just study public health at the #1 public health school in the country? Sure do. Both of those are true at once.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this insight that you shared that, I open my Instagram, and because I follow so many influencers, they are saying all these positive things about mindfulness and manifesting and the change in attitude of I have to and get to. And the difference is you consume that, but you don't practice. So that comes with a lot of reinforcement. Yeah. So for it to become a habit. Yeah. And I don't know, it's just that a lot of bumps in the road just make you go back to that core belief that, things just don't work out for me. And it is hard to go back again, because that again requires a lot of strength. And I'm glad that you're able to do that. But I can also sense that with all that you're mentioning, there's a deep rooted sense of healthy boundaries. And it's only when you prioritize what is actually important and are able to distinctly, let's just say, just categorize that, okay, this is my thought, and is this real, or is it something that I'm, my biases or all the things that are happening around me are making me believe, or is this something that I see hope into? Yeah. So I want to know, what is your story when I talk about the word boundaries and healthy boundaries?
Woof. Well, it has to start with the fact that I lived in a 12-person feminist collective for most of college, all of college. And boy, if there's ever a place you need boundaries, it's a 12-person feminist collective. I discovered feminism really young, and it was really associated with a lot of my anger and, can I swear?
Go ahead.
It was associated with a lot of my anger and fuck you attitude of being I am treated differently because of the body I was born into, and the expectations of me are different, and that sucks, and I don't like it, and I'm angry, and I'm a teenager, and I wear all black, which was very much my...
Were you an emo kid?
No, I wasn't emo. I was solidly a Hot Topic, heavy metal mosh pit kid.
Were your favorite colors black and purple?
Yeah. Yes,
I can't imagine.
The number of mesh items I had to get rid of as I get older is staggering. Not had to get rid of, but
it was time. Yeah,
it was time. I've only kept one mesh item, and it came off the lead singer of a band, so I'll never get rid of it.
Ooh, okay.
But so that anger, I think, was really useful in setting boundaries, because my boundaries became, this is where I stop. Right? You cannot go any further. This is where I stop. And then as I got older and I started to do more feminism work that was around like pleasure and how do you build pleasure into your life, whether that is like sexual or food or body or friendship or otherwise, I started to realize that boundaries are only useful if they're not permeable, but like everybody has them. And so if I'm just asserting that this is how far you can go with me, that doesn't make space for other people's boundaries. And so how do we, someone actually yesterday described consent culture to me as a culture rooted in community, and like rape culture is super individualistic, right? And so I think that was a really good way of saying the thing that really changed for me in my teens and 20s, which was thinking about community and how are my boundaries. It's great that I have boundaries, but if I can't show up for community, my boundaries are shit. Show up for community in the way that I want to, right? Like if taking care of myself stops me from doing the things that fuel me in other ways, whether it's showing up to protest or making meals for a friend or helping with childcare or like showing up with my positive attitude the way I want to, those don't serve me. And so I've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of thinking around how do I protect myself so I can show up the way I want to show up? What do I need? To your point about being in the gym at 7 a.m., I got to work out a couple times a week or I'm just not the person I want to be. I am trying to meditate every day just so that I can like have another support system. Talking to friends is really like the balance is really important, and the balance of making sure that I uphold my boundaries, but not hold them so rigidly that I fracture my relationships.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Did that make sense?
It definitely did, because I also resonate with a lot of what you said, because it's also about how I show up and who I am. So there has to be a very there's a clear distinction between both of those things. And the sense of community and just those insights that I think that they go way deep. And I'm really fascinated by this, because when we talk about boundaries, they seem like this wall,
Yeah.
you know. But the thing is, when you love people, when relationship matters, you kind of soften those boundaries, and you have to. They don't have to be that rigid, and there has to be again a self-awareness about this is a rigid boundary, and this is something that I can soften more about. So I love that. But I also understand that a lot of who you are, and this is just an assumption here, that a lot of who you are has come from your passion and people around you and the community around you, may it be your family or friends or school or all of the instances that have happened in your life, and the meaning that you have given to them. But I want to know, the person that you are now and the person you are today, is there something that you wish was different when you were a child or in your childhood?
Ooh, man, if you had asked me that question even like 3 years ago, I would have a list for you.
Let's go back 3 years ago. But yeah.
Right now I don't have there are a lot of things that had they been different, I may or may not be the person I am today. But I think something that is true is like, most days I really like the person I am today. And so it's taken, again, a good amount of therapy and a good amount of practice and a good amount of like and I mean practices from like sitting still and meditating to like doing circus, right? Like a whole lot of different ways of exploring myself and who I am that I like do pretty much like who I am today. And I'm wary of toxic positivity. It doesn't make me grateful for things in my childhood that were terrible or would have been great if they were different, or like, to be fully frank, memories I can't access due to trauma, right? Like, sure, probably would have been nice if those things never happened.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if fundamentally I could wish for difference, because I can look at all the things both of my parents and all the like loving adults and community gave me. And the fact that like going to synagogue growing up, it gave me some real crap, but it also gave me some really beautiful stuff, right? And like, I think maybe I've started to be wary as I get older of throwing the baby out with the bathwater of like, I got really into Taoism when I was younger. But one of the things I loved was this unity of opposites, right? The idea that you can't have dark without light. And I think that so frequently when we see that on like Instagram, it's meant to be toxic positivity. And my understanding of it has really deepened to like, they don't exist in a vacuum, right? It's not about finding the light all the time. It's about understanding that where there's light, there also probably is darkness, and those two just sort of coexist.
Yeah, but you choose to focus on the light. That's how you are as a person. Or, I'm sorry, it feels like you disagree. And one of the things I want to tell everyone about Olivia is that you can see it on her face, right? Her expressions. It's our beloved Professor John from statistics. He will stop in the middle of the lecture just because he thinks that, oh, maybe Olivia has a comment, because her face will show she doesn't agree. But yes, so about positivity, I feel like you had something to say.
No, I don't know if I disagree. I do. My face does show everything I'm thinking. I should never play poker. When I remember, I choose to focus on the light. I think one of the things that's true too is I'm not always in control. I don't always remember.
So it is hard, and it requires practice.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I have noticed is this confidence of self-acceptance. Please tell me, Olivia, how much of that self-acceptance and being so self-aware comes from being born in a household where you have feminist sisters and a mother?
Well,
give them the credit if it is due.
A lot of it. And my aunt was a political organizer. Like, I just come from this line of absolutely fucking badass women, and the men weren't bad either, but badass women who praised me for, I mean, they also really wanted some things about me to be different, but they did praise me for being myself, which felt important and huge. And like, it's good that you're a critical thinker. It's good that you can do all these things. It's like the classic example I give. It is not about me, but it's about my mother's dog, our first dog that we had growing up. We were trying to teach him and train him, and we were trying to get him to come when he was called, and he wouldn't do it, and he wouldn't do it. And my mother finally went, "Oh, look at him. He knows exactly who he is, and he won't. He doesn't need to listen to us." And like, that's the house I was raised in. More boundaries probably would have been useful. More structure would have been useful, but that has really helped me create a sense of myself.
Yeah.
And I have been really lucky and amazed to find friends as I get older who do something similar. And I think that is a real practice of like loving people for who they are so they can love you for who you are. I think that's a real two-way street. Yeah. Also, like, this is going to sound so cheesy, but I can't be anybody else. My laugh is loud and annoying. All my emotions show on my face. I like think what I think, and I always have 80 questions. And sometimes I'm really wrong, but I'm pretty good at changing my mind. And like, those are things I can't change about myself. So I can either fight against it. Maybe it's all my martial arts that I've done. I can either fight against it, or I can like do the jujitsu and use its energy.
No, I mean, that's something that really attracted me to you, because you are unapologetically yourself. You were just like, hey, this is me and I'm wrong, but I don't care. And I'm just, I'm going to ask the question anyway. And that amount of courage, I really wanted to be your friend. My inner Jasmine was like, I have to talk to her. And also when my inner critic is, I think it's on steroids, so it's active all the time, even when I'm sleeping. So when I see something that a person who is confident and happy and living their life on their terms, I'm just really attracted to them, and I really want to learn from them, because I have issues with liking myself enough. And even before this conversation, we were having that conversation. But for people like me, or for anyone who is listening and has trouble with self-awareness and self-acceptance and everything that Olivia resonates around her, what advice do you have for us?
Oof. I think the first one is don't put me on a pedestal. I still struggle. It's a daily practice, and I still struggle with it. There are still times that I look at my body and I'm like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if these 4 things were different? And by times, I mean every day. There are still I don't love being wrong in public. I'm getting better at it, but it's like not great. It's not a thing I enjoy. I think like choosing where to put my focus has been really important. And so like don't put people on a pedestal because especially me. Maybe there are people you can put on a pedestal, but like I'm not perfect at it. I'm just trying it. And if we want to try it together, that sounds great. The other thing about that, about confidence, I think especially for women and people of color and folks who are disabled or like in larger bodies or a whole host of things, the first thing that pops into my mind when I'm like clear-headed enough to be cognizant is like, is this a tool of the patriarchy? Are they trying to make me mad at my face so I buy skin cream? And like, I love a skin cream routine, right? Like I love a skin cream routine. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't do it. It's just one of those things where I'm like, how is this a tool of power and is it serving me? Right? Because like there are things I don't like about myself that I'm working on and that I don't feel confident about that are honestly things I would like to get better at. But like not liking my belly, what does that do for me at all? Nothing. It makes me buy a gym membership and tighter jeans. That's not for me.
Yeah. So I hear that you have to be aware of, is this the reality and are these your core values and where are they stemming from?
Yeah.
It makes me go back to one of those leadership classes and going to the root cause analysis. And I was in this class, and for all the issues that we were working on, patriarchy was one of them. And we could not stress more on this, that even though it is called patriarchy, men and children and all are victims. It's
Totally.
That's how feminism is misunderstood because but that's what we say, that it's everyone who is somehow affected by this, and it's their lives that are getting affected by it. But yeah, I love those thoughts. I love those insights. Thank you, Olivia. I do have a little game session that I do during this podcast.
Yes.
It's not fun, but it is something new. So I'm trying this. It's called Have You Ever?
Oh, sure.
And this is one question that I ask you. And this also is a question directed to my listeners so that they can participate and share their experiences about what this question meant to them. And, I'm trying to build my community around, different various experiences. And yes, please, if you're listening to me, share your thoughts about this question and try to connect with us as well. So the question that I have for you is, have you ever manifested something in your life that at one point you thought that this would never happen to you?
Yes, asterisk. Okay. Manifesting is a tough concept for me because I think especially a lot of white women in the United States think they're manifesting when it's privilege. So two things are true, right? So like, yes, intention is super important and I believe in intention and I pull tarot and I'm witchy enough to like understand that what we put out and what we pay attention to has magic in it. Also, I think for especially white women in the United States, we have to recognize like, did you manifest it? Did you?
Or is it just, white privilege? Like, what is it?
Right.
Yeah, and also I'm just interrupting this. I think pretty privilege is such a huge thing. You can't just be like, oh my God, I manifested that I would get a promotion. But I'm like, oh, did you talk with your boss?
Yes. Right? Like, yeah. So like all of that being true, there are definitely things that, so the example, my husband was born in Japan, and in Japan there's something called a doruma, which is like a little, like a figure you bring into your home, and when you set a goal, you color in one eye, and when you achieve the goal, you color in the other. And so we had a daruma when we moved from New York to Philadelphia, in part because like New York was very expensive, and we were like trying to think about, could we have our own property? A union organizer and an arts educator, could we have our own property? And we were able to buy a house in 2018 because, and I want to be, this is what I mean about privilege versus manifesting. We changed our lives. We moved out of a very expensive city where we had huge friends and support systems to a city where we had much less and we didn't have the same like history. And we lived in a shitty apartment for a year and a half, and we saved a ton of money. And Philly has a great new homeowner program, so we were able to put so little money down, and we were able to buy a house, right? And that's the thing where like we set some intentions, we made some choices. We also moved to a place where we got some support and some privileges. Also, we made a smart choice. We moved to a much more inexpensive city. But like, yeah, we have a house now, and that's amazing. And it's truly a thing I never thought I was going to be able to. I didn't expect at all. And it's a life-changing like investment, truly.
Yeah.
And so that's one of them. That's the thing I think about all of the time. Also, I didn't manifest her, but we had a dog for many, many years who died last summer, and she was like what my friend Lou calls my soul dog. Like, I don't know, whatever happened, I can tell you the exact story of how she ended up in our lives, but man, that was me pushing real hard because I wanted a dog and being like, well, we'll just foster one and it'll be great. And the foster fell through, and then she ended up on our doorstep. And I was like, oh, well, this is what was meant to be.
I love that.
And so yet again, right, like my choices, my pushing, but also my real intention and the magic in it.
Yeah, I love that. And how manifestation can sometimes not exactly look like what you thought it would look like for you, but then that is exactly what was meant to happen, and that was the joy that was waiting for you. I love that, and I'm so happy. And can I also say that Joe, your husband,
I did not manifest him.
Is it okay if I say that I love him?
He's great. Yeah, you should love him.
I do love him very, very deeply. I think he's one of those men who raise standard of men in my eyes. I'm like, this is hard to get, but yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. It's really frustrating to be married to the man who is everyone's favorite person. Like, everybody loves him, which is wonderful. And also, every once in a while, I'm like, somebody love me.
And I'm pretty sure at that time, Joe is like, I love you.
Yes, it's true.
That should be enough. But yes, he is incredible. And we are now, just moving towards the end of the podcast. And I have one final question for you. Just a few months are left for us to graduate. And I was just wondering if there is something that you want to be mindful about for these months before you graduate, whether it's just, making sure that you achieve something or that you want to do more of before you graduate.
Yeah.
Calling people out on their bullshit? No?
I think I do that plenty. Or rather, let me say that differently. I would like to continue to do that in the amount that I currently do.
Fair enough.
At some point, we will talk about the ongoing battle I have with one particular professor, but it will come at a later date. But so I think people who are listening and everybody who knows me can tell that my brain is such a thing that like I take the long way around because I think branchingly. But so my undergraduate thesis was on the sociology of silence and silence breaking. And one of the things I really learned from that was in order to break silence, you first have to pull things into your frame of vision. Because so frequently what silence teaches us is not to notice something. You don't notice. We don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what we've been taught not to notice. And so maybe you've been told, the classic example is a kid is walking with a parent down the street and sees an unhoused person and says, Mommy, what's that? Or Daddy or Auntie, who's that? And they say, don't worry about it, right? And then if that happens enough, you learn literally not to notice that, right? You learn literally not to notice homeless folks on the street. And I don't say that as a blame. I just mean like none of us, you have to pull it inside the frame first.
Yeah.
And so a question I ask myself a lot is like, what am I not seeing? What am I missing? What's outside of my frame? And so when I think about the last couple of months of school, I'm really trying to think about the balance of what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. I've done a pretty good job of achieving the balance of like making some friends I like a lot, getting my work done, and still maintaining my like friendships and relationships from home. Because again, I'm like an adult with responsibilities. But I haven't done a great job of some of the professional development pieces. And I haven't been as involved in like some of the student organizations as I would like. And I haven't done as much Networking. I know it's important and I know it's necessary, but it's not my favorite thing. And so I've been really, I don't quite yet know all the things I want to do, but I really want to look at what are the things I haven't yet taken advantage of and how can I build in just a little more, right? Like, I don't want to lose the balance I've so tenuously created.
Yeah.
But it probably isn't bad to like go to one or two more student events or like do another networking session or attend more of those dean's talks.
Yeah. I hear that. Thank you. Can I just say that you are one of those people that I feel do amazingly well at connecting. So I'm pretty sure that you'll be great at networking. And also because I've had the privilege of partnering up with you for an elevator pitch that we delivered together. You are going to be amazing. If you find Olivia in an elevator, ask her to deliver a pitch. That will be the best moment of your life, yeah.
Oh, wait, can I ask you a question?
Sure, of course. Go ahead.
What are the things that you've manifested?
Hopkins.
That's amazing!
I grew up watching Grey's Anatomy and I wanted to become a surgeon so bad. And I remember that, people would ask me, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be at Hopkins. And I would never say that I want to be a doctor at Hopkins and I would do this or I would do that. I would just say Johns Hopkins. That's something I'll add that. And I just never thought it would be through public health. I just never thought that would be where my life would eventually take me, but it makes so much more sense that this is the part of Johns Hopkins that I am associated with. But yeah, it was something that at one point I thought I don't deserve it. It would probably never happen. But hey, if I'm just, so yeah.
For those of you listening, Jasmine's in a Johns Hopkins sweatshirt right now, like really repping.
Yep, that's my investment. I want everything Johns Hopkins, from a keychain to a pendant to everything. I'm gonna have Johns Hopkins written everywhere.
The forehead tattoo is coming.
I think it's gonna be on my back,
okay.
But yeah.
Also, it used to make me really sad to hear people say, especially like people I think are amazing, that they don't think they deserve something. But it doesn't make me sad anymore because like being able to say it is so much the first part, right? Like so many times we don't think we deserve something and we don't say it out loud, and saying it out loud and like copping to it's still sad and you still definitely deserve it and you're doing amazing here. But also like if we can't talk about it, there's no way we can make change.
Absolutely. But I also think that with every time I've said that I don't deserve this and I'm not worthy of this, people have said, oh no, you do, you're amazing, you're this, you're that. I really wish that they would have just asked me why. Because what that would have done is just help me understand that, oh, this is why I think it. Is this really the truth?
Is it your thought?
Is it my thought, or is it, so that's why I think therapy has helped, because my therapist has asked those questions and now she's super rich. I am the reason behind her Mercedes, but yeah.
Yeah, my therapist is like probably having a baby right now. Actually, that's a little, but like, I was like, I'm glad I could outfit your babies. Like, life.
I'm glad to have paid for their college tuition.
I am. Honestly, I got more out of it than that kid will.
Yeah, but here's how you heal. Here's how you learn, unlearn, and relearn. So, yeah. Thank you for being on the podcast, Olivia. I'm so blessed to have you in my life and on this podcast. And for all my listeners, be safe and be kind and have a great one. Take care.